Jake had always lived a normal life. He worked a regular job at a tech company in the heart of the city, went to the gym a few times a week, and spent his weekends with friends, watching movies or grabbing a drink. Nothing special. That is, until one quiet night, everything changed. It was just after midnight when Jake stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The city was calm. The streets empty except for a few late-night workers and taxis. He looked up at the sky, the moon full and bright. It was the sort of night that made him think of nothing at all. Until the lights appeared. At first, there were nothing more than a few dots in the sky, moving too fast to be airplanes. Jake squinted, unsure of what he was seeing. The dots grew larger, quickly becoming a bright, glowing object, far too large and too close for comfort. His heart raced as it approached with incredible speed, and before he could react, a blinding flash of light swallowed him whole. When Jake opened his eyes again, he was no longer on Earth. His surroundings were completely unfamiliar. The air smelled different, and the ground beneath him was solid metal, not the familiar pavement of his city streets. He looked around in confusion. He was in a large, dimly lit room. Strange symbols were painted on the walls, and the hum of machinery filled the air. A sense of panic began to rise within him. What happened? Where am I? He muttered to himself, trying to move, but his legs felt weak, as if he had been lying down for too long. He looked around and found that he was in some sort of cage, a high-tech prison that was far from anything he could have imagined. He tried to break free, banging against the walls of the cage, but it was no use. The metal was cold, unyielding, and he couldn't even find a door. His breath quickened, and he shouted for help. Hello? Someone. Help! Then, the door to the cage opened without warning. Jake froze, his heart pounding. A figure stood in the doorway. She was tall, with a commanding presence that seemed to fill the room. She had dark, almost metallic skin that shimmered in the dim light, and her eyes were unlike anything he had ever seen. They glowed, a natural shade of blue. Her hair, silver and long, fell over her shoulders, and she wore a sleek, futuristic outfit that looked far too advanced for anything Jake had seen. She stepped inside. Without a word, her gaze fixed on him. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Jake could barely breathe, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Then she spoke, her voice smooth, calm, but carrying an undeniable authority. You're mine now, she said simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. Jake blinked, still processing the words. What do you mean by that? He stammered. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was she serious? He had just been abducted by an alien, and now she was saying that he belonged to her. Her lips curled into a small, confident smile. You are mine, forever, she said, stepping closer to the cage. There is no escape. Jake took a step back, his mind racing. I don't even know you. Where am I? What do you want with me? The woman's smile faded slightly, but she didn't seem angry. It's not about what I want with you, human, she replied, her voice lowering. It's about what your kind will need from me. I've chosen you for a purpose. You will understand soon enough. Chosen me, Jake repeated, his mind spinning. What do you mean? I'm just a regular guy. The alien woman raised an eyebrow. The strongest of us don't always come from the strongest of places. You've been chosen because you are something special. Jake took a step toward her, his hands gripping the bars of the cage. You've got to let me go. I don't know what you want, but I don't belong here. I've got a life back home. Her expression softened for a moment. You may feel that way now, she said, her voice growing gentle, but this is your fate, and you will learn to accept it. Jake's chest tightened, and for a moment, he felt something that wasn't fear, curiosity. Who are you? He asked quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. I'm Arya, she said simply, her gaze never leaving him. And I am your future. Jake swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to shout, to fight back. But something in Arya's eyes made him hesitate. There was something unsettling yet magnetic about her, a force he couldn't explain. Before he could say another word, she turned to leave. I will return soon, she said over her shoulder. her voice echoing in the cold, empty room. "Get used to this place. You'll be here for a long time." As the door closed behind her, Jake sank to the floor, his heart racing. He was trapped. But the question that lingered in his mind was, why him, and what was Arya really planning? Hours passed slowly after Arya left. Jake sat in the cage, his mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. He had been abducted, taken to a strange ship, and locked in a high-tech prison. His mind kept circling back to one question. Why? Him? The ship around him hummed with a strange, steady rhythm. The walls glowed faintly, covered in symbols Jake didn't understand. It was as if the entire ship was alive, breathing, pulsing with energy. He had never seen anything like it before. He tried to calm himself, but fear and confusion twisted. Inside him, "I need to get out of here," he muttered under his breath. He stood up, pacing around the small cell. He didn't know how or when, but he had to find a way to escape. His home, his life on Earth, was waiting for him. The door to his cage slid open once more, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. Arya stepped inside, her presence commanding and steady. She didn't seem surprised to see him standing, as if she had known exactly what he'd be doing. Jake stood still, watching her warily. "Why am I here? What do you want with me?" he asked, his voice louder this time, though it shook with uncertainty. Arya's eyes softened for a brief moment, but her calm smile returned quickly. "I've told you before," she said, her voice steady and smooth. "You are special. You're here because of your bloodline." Jake shook his head. "What do you mean, my bloodline? I'm just a regular guy from Earth." Arya took a step closer, and Jake instinctively took a step back. She wasn't threatening, but her power was undeniable. "You're not just any human," she said, her voice taking on a mysterious tone. "Your ancestors were not only part of Earth's history, they were key players in the events of the galaxy. A long time ago, they helped my people survive a great war. Your bloodline carries the power to unlock a weapon that could end the war for good." Jake frowned, trying to make sense of her words. "What war? What are you talking about?" Arya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze to the far wall of the room, as though contemplating something. "The galaxy is not at peace, Jake. It never truly has been. My people, the Aurelians, were once the rulers of this region, but we were betrayed, attacked, and pushed to the brink of extinction. The Xantorians, a race of conquerors, destroyed our civilization." Jake's mind raced. He had never heard of the Aurelians or the Xantorians, but the way Arya spoke, with such gravity, made it clear that this wasn't a fantasy. "So you want me to help you fight them?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Arya met his gaze. "Yes. You will help me stop them before they come for Earth." Jake shook his head, still confused. "I'm just a guy who works in an office. I don't know anything about war or fighting aliens." "You don't need to know everything yet," she replied calmly. "But your role is more important than you realize. Your ancestors built a weapon of hidden power that only someone with your bloodline can activate. It's the last hope to save not just your planet, but countless others." Jake's mind was spinning. His ancestors, a weapon? He had no idea what she was talking about, but something about Arya's words felt real. She wasn't lying. He could see the truth in her eyes. "I don't want to be a part of any war," Jake said, his voice firm. "I just want to go home." Arya stepped closer, her expression softening. "I understand. I was once like you, afraid, uncertain of what I could do. But sometimes, Jake, life chooses us for things we don't understand. I didn't want this either, but now I have no choice. Neither do you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You don't have to fight on your own. I will help you. Together, we can stop the Xantorians before they destroy everything." Jake looked at her, still unsure, but the way she spoke gave him a sense of hope. She wasn't forcing him into this. She was offering him a chance to make a difference, to be part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that, but the more he listened to her, the more he realized that maybe he didn't have a choice. He let out a long breath, trying to steady his nerves. "So, What do we do now? Arya's eyes brightened, a flicker of relief crossing her face. We begin preparing. The Xantorians are not far behind. Time is running out. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. I'll come back soon. Jake, there's much more you need to learn. But for now, rest. The journey ahead will be difficult. As the door slid shut behind her, Jake slumped back against the wall. Rest. He barely knew what was going on, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed in a way he couldn't understand. There was no going back. He closed his eyes, trying to process everything. If Arya was right, and if he really was part of something this huge, then maybe he had a bigger purpose. Maybe this wasn't just about saving Earth. Maybe, just maybe, it was about something that would change the fate of the entire galaxy. But first, he needed to survive the next steps, whatever they might be. Jake woke up in a small, dimly lit room that seemed to be a part of the ship. The walls were made of a strange, smooth material that he couldn't identify. It felt like the entire ship was alive, vibrating gently, as if it were a creature in motion. The same humming sound that had filled the air the night before was still there, and it helped calm Jake's nerves at least a little. He had barely slept, tossing and turning, his mind overwhelmed by everything Arya had said, a weapon hidden by his ancestors, a galactic war, and the responsibility of saving Earth. All these things felt like too much. How could he, a regular person, possibly help in such a situation? He sat up, rubbing his face. I can't keep doing this, he muttered to himself. I just want to go home. But if what Arya says is true, I might not have a choice. Before he could think more, the door slid open, and Arya stepped inside. She was as composed as ever, her cool demeanor never faltering. She didn't seem surprised to find him awake. Jake stood up slowly, still trying to process everything. Arya, I don't understand. You keep saying I'm important, that I have this power, but I'm not some warrior. I've never done anything like this before. Arya's eyes softened as she looked at him. I know this is hard for you, Jake, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to guide you. She walked over to the far side of the room, where a large screen flickered to life. It showed a map of the galaxy, one Jake didn't recognize. Several star systems were marked in red, with arrows pointing toward Earth. Here, Arya said, pointing to the screen. This is where the Xantorians are coming from. They've been slowly expanding, conquering everything in their path. But what they want is not just control. They want the ancient technology hidden on Earth, the one your ancestors helped create. Jake stepped closer to the screen, his mind trying to absorb the information. So, they want this weapon. Yes, she replied. The weapon that can stop them. Your bloodline is the key to unlocking it. Jake, without you, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Jake shook his head, still struggling with the idea that he was some kind of chosen one. I don't feel like I'm some hero. I don't know the first thing about war, or fighting aliens, or even how to help you. I'm just me. Arya's expression grew serious. That's the thing, Jake. You don't have to be a warrior to make a difference. Your ancestors were not soldiers either. They built this weapon for survival, not for destruction. They believed that Earth should be left untouched. They wanted peace. But the Xantorians don't believe in peace. They believe in domination. She stepped closer to him, her eyes locking onto his. And you, Jake, you have the power to stop them. The weapon can only be activated by someone with your bloodline. That's why you're here. Jake took a deep breath, the weight of her words pressing down on him. But how do I even start? How do I unlock this weapon? I'm just a guy. Arya smiled faintly. That's where I come in. I've trained my entire life to understand the ways of the galaxy, and I'll help you unlock your potential. But it will take time, patience, and trust. You have to trust me, Jake. Jake looked at her, feeling the conflict inside. He had never wanted any of this. He had never asked for his life to change in such a dramatic way. But as he looked into Arya's eyes, he saw something he couldn't quite name. But it was there, a glimmer of hope, a chance to make a real difference. I don't know if I can do this, Jake said, his voice quieter now. But if Earth really is in danger, and if what you're saying is true, I'll try. I don't know how much help I'll be, but I'll try. Arya placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm but kind. That's all I ask, Jake. Just try. We're in this together now. Jake nodded slowly, unsure of what would happen next, but knowing there was no turning back. A few hours later, Arya took Jake to another part of the ship, a training room that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. There were various pieces of equipment around the room, some that looked like simple tools, while others seemed far more advanced than anything Jake had ever seen. Today, we start your training, Arya said, her tone purposeful. You'll need to learn how to harness your abilities and understand the power inside you. The Xantorians are not going to wait for you to catch up. We'll begin with something simple. Jake looked at the training equipment warily. Simple? You want me to fight in that? It's not about fighting, Arya said. It's about control. Focus. The weapon that's inside you is not physical, it's mental. Your mind is the key. She moved over to a small device in the corner, which lit up with a soft glow. This will help you focus. Trust me. Jake reluctantly stepped forward. He didn't know what to expect, but he was willing to try. If there was a chance to save Earth and stop the Xantorians, he had to take it, no matter how difficult it seemed. Arya gave him a nod of encouragement. Let's begin. Jake stood in the center of the training room, his palms sweating slightly. The soft, humming sound of the ship filled the air around him, adding to the strange tension in the room. He had been practicing for hours now, following Arya's instructions. At first, he had felt hopeless, unsure of how focusing on his mind could help him. But with every passing moment, he could feel something shifting inside him. It wasn't physical, but it was real. Focus, Jake. Arya's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood at the side of the room, watching him carefully. You must learn to control the power within you. It's not just about reacting, it's about understanding and using your thoughts to shape reality. Jake nodded, trying to clear his mind. It was harder than he expected. Every time he tried to focus, his mind wandered. Earth, home, his friends. But each time he thought about escaping, he reminded himself that it wasn't an option. There was no going back now. Arya had made it clear that the fate of the galaxy and Earth rested on his ability to control the strange power. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, slowly. He tried to quiet the noise in his head. I can do this, he whispered to himself. I have to. The room around him seemed to shift. For a brief moment, everything felt still. The air grew heavier, and Jake's senses sharpened. He could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. It was like he was no longer just in the room. He felt connected to everything, connected to the ship, to the air, to the distant stars outside. The windows. That's it. Arya's voice reached him again, more quietly now. You're starting to understand. Focus on the energy. Don't force it. Let it flow. Jake felt a strange warmth fill his chest, as if something inside him was awakening. He wasn't sure what it was, but it felt powerful. It was like an untapped resource waiting to be used. Suddenly, the object in front of him, a floating metal ball, shifted. Jake hadn't done anything to make it move, but there it was, floating just a few inches off the ground. His eyes shot open, and he blinked in surprise. Had he done that? Arya smiled, her eyes filled with approval. You did it, Jake. You made it move. Now, we need to control it. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That's amazing. I didn't know I could do that. You have much more potential than you realize, Arya said. But this is just the beginning. The power you're learning to control isn't just for moving things. It's about harnessing energy, manipulating the forces around you. You'll need that skill to unlock the weapon your ancestors left behind. Jake looked at the floating ball again, feeling a mix of awe and fear. The more he learned, the more he realized just how far this journey would take him. It wasn't just about fighting off aliens. It was about something far greater. And whether he liked it or not, it was his responsibility now. Arya stepped forward, and the ball dropped back to the ground with a soft thud. I want to show you something, she said. Something that will help you understand what you're truly capable of. Jake followed her through a narrow corridor to another part of the ship. The walls here were darker, the atmosphere more serious. It was different from the areas he had seen before. Arya stopped in front of a large door and placed her hand on a glowing panel. The door slid open, revealing a large chamber filled with strange equipment. "This is the core of the ship," Arya explained. "It holds the knowledge of my people, the energy you feel inside you. Jake, it's part of this. It's part of the galaxy's ancient power." Jake looked around in wonder. The chamber was filled with glowing symbols and machinery that seemed to pulse with life. It was nothing like anything he had ever seen before. He stepped inside, his eyes wide. This is incredible." Arya nodded. "This is where you will learn to tap into the full potential of your bloodline. This place is more than a weapon. It's the key to saving everything." She walked over to a console and pressed a few buttons. A holographic map appeared in the air, showing a web of connected systems, planets, and stars. Some areas were marked in red threads from the Xantorians, the very people Jake had heard about. But in the center, there was a glowing symbol, his family's symbol. "This is where your ancestors hid the weapon," Arya said. "It's not just a physical weapon, Jake. It's a force of pure energy, and it can only be unlocked by you." Jake stared at the symbol, feeling a strange pull. There was something about it that seemed familiar. The more he looked at it, the more it felt like a part of him. He stepped closer to the hologram, his hand instinctively reaching out as his fingers neared the image. A wave of energy flowed through him. He gasped as the power surged, and the symbol seemed to react. "That's it," Arya said softly, her voice filled with pride. "You're connecting with it. This is the first step." Jake took a deep breath, stepping back from the hologram. "I don't know what I just did," he said, his voice a mix of amazement and confusion. "But I felt something, like it was inside me." Arya smiled. "That's because it is. The power is inside you, Jake. All we need to do now is unlock it. With your help, we can stop the Xantorians. You have the strength to protect Earth and the galaxy." Jake's mind was spinning. He had come so far in such a short time, and yet he felt like he was just getting started. The weight of what lay ahead was heavy, but for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. He wasn't just a regular guy anymore. He had a purpose. And if he could learn to control this power, maybe, just maybe, he could help save everything. The days had been a blur. Jake had spent every moment learning and practicing. Guided by Arya's steady presence, the power inside him was growing stronger. Though he still didn't fully understand it, he had learned how to control small objects, how to focus his mind, and how to harness the energy within him. It was hard work, but there were moments when it clicked, when everything made sense for a brief second. But despite his progress, Jake couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was coming. Arya had been quieter lately, more focused. He could see the worry in her eyes, even when she tried to hide it. One evening, as Jake was finishing his training session, Arya called him over. Her face was serious, and there was a tension in her voice that he hadn't heard before. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, gesturing for him to sit beside her at a small table in the corner of the room. Jake sat down, his heart beating faster. "What's going on? You've been acting strange." Arya looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to tell him. Finally, she spoke. "The Xantorians are closer than I thought. They've already begun their march toward Earth." Jake's stomach sank. "How close are they?" "They're less than a week away," Arya replied, her voice steady but tense. "I've been tracking their movements. They're heading straight for your planet, and they won't stop until they've taken it." Jake leaned forward, his mind racing. "But we can stop them, right? We have the weapon. We can use it, right?" Arya's eyes darkened. "It's not that simple. The weapon is powerful, but it requires control and precision. And there's something else." She paused, as if unsure of how to continue. "What is it?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's a hidden threat that even I didn't expect. Someone from my past, someone who knows about the weapon, has betrayed us. They're working with the Xantorians." Jake's mind spun. "Who is it? How could they betray you?" Arya's gaze became hard. "His name is Therion. He was once my ally, a member of the Aurelian Council. He was a trusted leader, someone I thought I could rely on. But he's turned against us. He wants the weapon for himself. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. So, he's hoping the Xantorians get it? Yes, Arya replied. Therion knows that the weapon can only be activated by someone from your bloodline. He's going to try to take it for himself, and if he succeeds, the Xantorians will control everything. Jake clenched his fists. We can't let that happen. But if he's working with the Xantorians, how do we stop him? We have to find him before he can reach the weapon, Arya said, her eyes narrowing. Therion is not just dangerous because of his knowledge. He's also a powerful fighter, and he's not afraid to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Jake felt a surge of determination. We have to stop him. We can't let him get to that weapon. Arya stood up and walked toward a nearby console. She began typing quickly, pulling up maps and images on the screen. I've tracked Therion's last known location. He's on a planet in the Volter system, not far from here. We have to get there before he does. If he reaches the weapon first, everything we've fought for will be lost. Jake stood up as well, his mind made up. Then we go. We find him, and we stop him. Arya turned to him, her expression softer but still determined. Jake, I know. This is a lot. I know you didn't ask for this. But you have to understand this isn't just about Earth anymore. This is about the future of the galaxy, and you're the only one who can stop it. Jake nodded, his resolve strengthening. I understand. Let's go. We'll stop Therion. We'll stop the Xantorians. Arya's face broke into a small, almost relieved smile. Good. We'll need every bit of your strength for what's ahead. The journey to the Volter system was long, but Jake and Arya didn't waste any time. They traveled on the ship, with Jake continuing his training as best as he could every day. He felt the power inside him growing stronger. He still wasn't sure how to fully control it, but he knew that whatever happened, he had to trust his instincts. As they neared the planet where Therion was hiding, Jake's heart raced. The closer they got, the more he could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for the future of everyone on Earth and beyond. The ship entered the Volter system, and Jake could feel the tension building. Arya had already begun scanning the area, looking for any signs of Therion or the Xantorians. But the deeper they went into the system, the more dangerous it became. The Xantorians were out there, and time was running out. We're getting closer, Arya said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. We need to be careful. Therion won't hesitate to use any means necessary to stop us. Jake nodded. I'm ready. Let's finish this. The ship flew on, heading toward the unknown. With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Jake didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not ever. The Volter system loomed ahead as Jake and Arya's ship approached the planet where Therion had been hiding. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Arya had warned Jake that this mission would be their biggest challenge yet, and he could feel the weight of her words in his chest. The closer they got, the more he could sense the danger waiting for them. Arya sat beside him in the cockpit, her eyes fixed on the console. We're almost there, she said, her voice low. Therion's hiding in a fortress near the northern pole. It's well guarded, but if we move fast enough, we can catch him off guard. Jake nodded, trying to steady his nerves. He had trained hard, but he knew this would be the real test. There would be no turning back after this. They were going in to face Therion and the Xantorians. He couldn't afford to hesitate. The ship descended through the thick clouds of the planet's atmosphere. The ground below them a mix of icy mountains and rocky plains. In the distance, Jake could make out a massive structure rising from the landscape. It looked like a fortress, dark and imposing, just as Arya had described. Ready? Arya asked, glancing at Jake. He took a deep breath. Ready. The ship touched down on a flat plateau not far from the fortress. As the door of the ship opened, the cold air hit Jake's face, sending a shiver down his spine. He quickly grabbed his gear and followed Arya as they stepped out onto the frozen ground. The wind howled around them, but they couldn't afford to waste any time. They moved quickly, making their way toward the fortress. The snow crunched beneath their boots, and the wind seemed to carry a sense of foreboding. Jake's senses were on high alert as they approached the walls of the fortress. It was silent too silent. He could feel the tension building with every step. "I'll take care of the security systems," Arya said, her voice sharp. "You just stay close and be ready for anything." Jake nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The closer they got, the more uneasy he became. It was too quiet. Therion had to know they were coming, so why wasn't there any resistance yet? Arya reached the main entrance, and with a few quick movements, she bypassed the security system, and the massive doors slowly opened with a groan. She motioned for Jake to follow her, and they slipped inside. The interior was just as imposing as the outside, cold, dark, and filled with sharp angles. It looked like it had been built for one purpose, to intimidate. They moved through the hallways quickly, sticking to the shadows as much as possible. "This way," Arya whispered, leading the way toward a central chamber where Therion was most likely waiting. As they moved deeper into the fortress, the sound of footsteps echoed. In the distance, Jake froze, his heart pounding. Arya held up a hand, signaling for him to stop. They crouched behind a large pillar, listening. Through the silence, they could hear voices. Therion's voice. "Bring them to me," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "I want them alive. We'll make sure they understand their place." Jake clenched his fists, the anger bubbling up inside him. "We're not going to let him get away with this." Arya nodded, her eyes hard with determination. "Stay focused. We can't let him activate the weapon. If he gets to it first, it's over." They moved quickly, following the sounds of Therion's voice. The deeper they went into the fortress, the more they could feel the presence of the Xantorians. Jake could sense them, even though he couldn't see them yet. It was like a heavy, oppressive force in the air. They finally reached a large door at the end of the hall. The door was reinforced with thick metal, but it wasn't enough to stop Arya. She quickly hacked into the system, and the door slid open with a soft hiss inside. Therion stood before a large holographic map, his back to them. He was tall and imposing, with the same cold, calculating look that Jake had seen in Arya's eyes when she talked about him. Therion turned, sensing their presence, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "You," he sneered, his voice full of disdain. "I should have known you'd come, Arya. You always did think you could stop me, and now you've brought a human with you. How quaint." Jake stepped forward, anger filling him. "This ends now, Therion. You're not getting the weapon." Therion chuckled darkly. "You think you can stop me? You've always been weak. Arya, you've always been too soft, and you," he turned his gaze to Jake, "you're nothing but a pawn. You can't even begin to understand what you're about to unleash." Jake felt the power inside him flare up at Therion's words. He reached deep within, feeling the energy respond to his anger. It wasn't just power, it was his power. The energy he had learned to control. He wasn't going to let Therion take it. Not now, not ever. Arya stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Therion. "We won't let you win. You've already betrayed everything you once believed in. The Xantorians will never rule the galaxy. It's over." Therion's eyes burned with fury. "It's not over. It's just beginning." In that instant, the room erupted into chaos. The walls seemed to shake as the power of the weapon stirred to life. Responding to the tension in the air, Jake could feel it, could feel the weapons. Power awakening within him. He didn't have time to think, he had to act. He raised his hands, and the energy inside him surged. The force of the blast sent Therion stumbling back, his smug expression quickly replaced by shock. But even as he fell, Therion's eyes burned with a dangerous fury. "We won't lose," Therion spat. But his words were drowned out by the explosion of energy that filled the room. The room fell silent after the explosion. The air was thick with the lingering energy from Jake's blast, and everything seemed frozen in place. Jake stood in the center, his hands still raised, his body humming with the power that had surged through him just moments ago. He felt different, stronger, more connected to something greater than himself. It was the power he had been learning to control. But now, it felt like part of him. Therion lay on the ground, the shock of the blast knocking him out cold. His earlier confidence was gone, replaced by a cold, hard truth. He had underestimated Jake. The weapon had chosen him. The galaxy's fate had chosen him. Arya stepped forward cautiously, her eyes fixed on Jake. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You stopped him. You saved us." Jake lowered his hands, the energy within him slowly fading, but not entirely gone. He turned to Arya, a small, tired smile forming on his lips. "I didn't do it alone. You helped me every step of the way." Arya smiled back, her eyes softening. "You're right, but what you just did, it's incredible. The power you've unlocked, Jake, it's more than just the weapon. You're more than just a human now. You've become a force that can change everything." Jake felt a mix of pride and uncertainty. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. I still don't fully understand how it works or why it's me." Arya stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "No one is ever truly ready for something like this. But you're doing it, and you've proven that you have the strength to protect not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. You've become the protector the galaxy needed." Jake looked around at the room, at the massive holographic map of the galaxy displayed in front of them. Earth was safe for now, but the battle wasn't over. The Xantorians were still out there, and the galaxy was still in turmoil. He felt a sense of responsibility weigh on him, but it didn't feel as heavy as it once did. Now, he had a purpose. He had a family, Arya, and the Aurelians, and he had the power to make a difference. Arya's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We still need to finish what we started. The Xantorians are not gone, and Therion may have been just the beginning. We have to make sure this never happens again." Jake nodded, his determination solidifying. "We'll make sure of it, together." Arya gave him a smile, and for the first time in a long time, Jake saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She had been fighting for so long, carrying the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders. But now, with Jake by her side, she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. "We'll rebuild," she said softly. "We'll protect Earth, and we'll stop anyone who tries to take it, and I promise. Jake, you'll never be alone in this fight." Jake felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had come so far from the terrified human who had been abducted by Arya. Now, he was part of something much bigger, something that was worth fighting for. The sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber, breaking the moment. Arya turned, her hand instinctively moving to the weapon at her side. But Jake stopped her, placing a hand on her arm. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're not alone anymore." Arya looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. She nodded and relaxed, her weapon lowering. The footsteps grew louder, and soon, a group of Aurelian warriors entered the room, their faces a mix of relief and respect. They had seen what Jake had done, felt the power he had wielded. They knew, just like Arya, that he was no longer just a human. He was something more, a protector, a hero. One of the warriors, a tall Aurelian woman with silver hair, stepped forward. "We've secured the rest of the fortress, and the Xantorian forces are retreating. They're not gone, but they're no longer a threat for now." Arya nodded, her expression calm. "Good. We've won this battle, but the war is far from over. Jake and I will lead the next steps. Together, we'll make sure the galaxy stays safe." The warrior bowed respectfully to Jake. "You've done more than just help us, human. You've become a symbol of hope for our people and for the rest of the galaxy." Jake felt a wave of humility wash over him. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't chosen to be a hero. But in that moment, he understood. It wasn't about being ready. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about doing what needed to be done and having the strength to keep going. Arya turned to him, her voice quiet but filled with conviction. "The galaxy needs people like you, Jake. People who aren't afraid to fight for what's right. People who aren't afraid to stand together, even when the odds are impossible." Jake looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of the responsibility ahead of him. But he wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't alone. He had Arya. He had the Aurelians. And most importantly, he had the strength to protect everything he cared about. "We'll face it together," Jake said, his voice firm, "and we'll win."